Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lampton Show. My name is Joey. This week I am joined by Neil
Hello, Joey.
and by Dom.
Hello there.
Big question. Did either of you see a 4-1 win in our stars before the game on Saturday?
I'd forgotten we even played football. It was just, come on. Where did that come from?
Dom, did you see it?
Yeah, I mean, not specifically 4-1 win. Yeah, I didn't have a great deal of expectations heading into that game. So, yeah, it was a nice boon getting the old 4 goals out.
Did we both, did we and Peterborough both have the same record going into it? Did we both win 2 in 7?
Possibly. But yeah, Peterborough had a really good home record up to that point, and we'd been, as we have been for much of the past few seasons, pretty poor on the road. So it felt a reasonable expectation that maybe it might have been a trickier game than it was.
Very strange. Let's do moments of the week. So, does anyone have one to hand?
I do.
Go on, Dom. You start.
Right. So let me tell you about something that happened in a commentary game at the weekend. Right. So there was a player who dallied on the ball in their own half, and they were tackled in it, and it cost their team a goal. But this time, the player doing the bullying was Ben Sheaf, and it resulted in Coventry City scoring a goal. I just felt that must have been a particularly sweet moment for him, just like a complete reversal of roles from last season, and he's been excellent of late, and that kind of just sums up the transformation in him, I thought.
He's been a bit of all right, hasn't he? And I also think it's probably not a coincidence that I think he's having a bit of a run. I'm going to say this now, and I'm not actually sure it's right, so someone will have to pick me up on it. Him and Harmer together, as opposed to Kelly, maybe.
Yeah, well, they played together in the cup game, and that just looked so much better compared to the Millwall game, where it was just Kelly, some space fed him, Sheaf, and then the rest of the pitch, which Sheaf had to cover. Hammer just made his job a lot more easy in recent games, and even though I think it's quite clear that Hammer isn't fully fit at the moment, it's just better for him to have someone who can just ease his workload, and it doesn't have to all go through him.
Yeah, quite. Neil, your moment of the week.
So, I mean, broadly, my moment of the week is that we played a game. I was looking at it, and we played one league game in a month or something ridiculous like that, which was just, I really missed it. Even though we were in our blip, as I thought of it at the time. It was watching us just drop down the table and not be able to do anything about it was a bit disheartening. So just being able to play was pretty good. And my other one is very childish, but I was watching iFollow at the weekend, and one of their players had a shot, rolled on the floor, and his shorts and pants fell down, and his bum was on show. And the best part of it, they still showed that shot on the highlights and kept his bum on show in the highlights. So I was like, oh no, somebody cut it, but no, they just left it. So I thought that was very amusing.
That is absolutely not bad. I'm going to give you a few. So obviously Harmer's goal. Now I was watching on iFollow, but I was actually closer to the Peterborough goal than Harmer was when he hit that. I think we've complained about a lack of goals from round the team, haven't we, this season? And it was just even as brilliant as a 35-yard strike is, it's great just to see someone else score a goal that isn't Godden, basically.
Yeah.
I'm also going to say O'Hare's assist, which I think everyone would agree with a magical piece of work from Callum O'Hare, and an undeniable assist, I think.
It'll take it.
I feel like I had one more, but I don't think I have. Let's move on. Right, we've made a solemn vow to attack this podcast thusly. Oh, I've remembered what else I wanted to talk about very quickly as moment of the week is can we talk very quickly about the ongoing battle between a section of Cov fans and the second tier podcast?
Yes, go on.
Right, I'm not going mad. Are you guys roughly aware of this?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the comments, and every time any comments on their tweets are from COD fans, so something's definitely happening.
So to be fair, their prediction, or I think the fellow called Justin, his prediction for this game was that we would get beat by Peterborough, right? But the people who have ever made any football predictions, including bets or whatever, know that it's a fool's errand, isn't it? Because it's a football match and anything can happen. That's one of the reasons that the sport is so good. But the things that he had pointed out as being the reasons, he said we were in poor form, we were over-reliant on Godden's goals, and there'd been a drop-off in form in some players, including Dabo, who'd been particularly noteworthy in not being very good against Derby. And I listened to it and I was like, yep, that does sound like us. There's about 50 comments underneath it saying, more disrespect against our glorious club. You're like, well, at what point it's deemed to be some sort of like a hate-filled vendetta, not just. It was really balanced and measured, and yet any time they talk about us, like there's this cadre of people that are like, how dare you? Like we're beyond criticism.
Have they done anything that's a bit wild though? Is that why it's come? I don't understand. Like, it must be something more than just them getting it mildly incorrect.
But I think no, because it's a build up. So at one point when I think we're probably still in the playoffs, one of them had said that we were starting to enter a period of shaky form, which was completely true. We not only were, but then we got worse. But the people were just like, oh, well, that's interesting because we appear to be in the playoffs. You're like, but I don't think that's that's not what they said, was it? But people seem to like, because we're doing reasonably well. People think that like it's like anything that you say that's bad now is like that you're evil. Whereas I just think like I'm. We've talked about this over and over again. I'm delighted with this season. But it's not perfect, is it? It's not.
No, it's not. No.
I am going to say like, oh god, that Millwall game was amazing. The lads were absolutely class. No, they weren't. That was what I was going to say. So we've pledged to sort of, in the spirit of positivity, only talk very briefly about the Millwall game. And even though we won the Derby game, it's a cup game, and we're going to refuse to acknowledge the existence of it. So, Neil, were you at Millwall?
Yes, I was.
Okay. What did you do in terms of a coat or jacket situation?
Remind me of the temperature, and I'll tell you.
I would describe it as remarkably mild.
Oh, it was that night, wasn't it? Yeah. It was all right. I didn't know what coat to wear, did I? So I took on a light jacket.
It's a difficult situation because you feel like the light jacket is going to be fine, but you've got to know that at any minute that situation can turn pretty heavily, can't it?
Oh yeah. I've been there. I've fallen foul to that many a time, and I get cold at the best of times as well. So it was a huge risk, but I think we came through. It was a good evening that. But then did it turn to like 2 degrees like the day after? Which
yes.
I mean, this isn't the weather podcast, but I think it's noteworthy that important that the weather changed so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, look, this could be the weather podcast. This might be a turning point for us.
Really should.
But let's not do it just yet. Let's instead talk about the Millwall game itself, if only briefly. I didn't have fun at all. I was there and I didn't enjoy 1 second of it, I wouldn't say.
It was hard work. It's because I still have this, and I maintain it, and I am correct that we're a really good team this year. I think we've got a lot about us, but we look very much like a team that was all over the place in terms of preparation and knowing when the last game was or what the next game will be, and it just kind of came at us. And I just didn't feel any more than ever this season. That was a game where we didn't really look like ourselves. Or the version of ourselves that I think we are, and I just, they didn't really offer anything by day. I mean, Millwall, they didn't really come at us that much. It wasn't much of a a struggle, but we just didn't have any sense of kind of attacking nous about us. And I mean, we also had my most hated of attacking combos of God and Walker up front, which just does not click. They need something else working around them, but that dynamic isn't for me. It was quite nice to see Ben Wilson in goal, just because I always thought he was a relatively sturdy keeper. So he came in. I think there was a medical reason for that, or COVID or something like that, wasn't there?
Simon Moore is a COVID survivor.
Is he now? Good for him. Is, yeah. Just to jump very quickly ahead, so Peterborough at the weekend, Wilson in goal. Was that still COVID related, or is he now Wilson in goal because everybody loves him again?
It's difficult to tell. Dom, I don't know whether you've got any actual insight into that, but it's got to be. I mean, it was the 20-something of December, so he's well outside of sort of isolation period. But then people have been really affected by it, haven't they? So maybe he's out of sorts.
And he was on the bench, wasn't he? So
yeah.
So that's what threw me. Him being on the bench, but he's a keeper. He can just sit there and look after things. So
probably off to Villa.
I did see that. Yeah, with the big boys. How do we get into this? Anyway, so against Millwall, it was not too great. We didn't have much kind of meaningful attacking thrust, and it was very symptomatic of a team that was what I'd like to think is coming to the end of their blip, but there was a big gap between the previous portion of their blip, so it just didn't feel right. And I almost was like, that was the turning point in my mind where I was like, okay, he needs to have a real rethink, because we'd lost some impetus, we'd lost some belief about what we were doing, and we had enough kind of attempts on goal and stuff. But I watched the highlights again before this just to remind myself on what the best attempts were, and 2 of them were from Todd Kane, and that kind of tells you everything you need to know about what we were actually creating. So, it was not a good game, and it kind of it had me a little bit worried because of where we are in the season, halfway point, and you like to see yourself kind of establishing some sort of momentum moving to the second half of the season. We didn't seem to be doing that, and obviously they came and really grabbed a very undeserved win, I would suggest. But our defence in that moment was an absolute shambles, and we didn't do anything really to stop it. So, deserved in the sense where we got what was coming to us. We were pretty lax up front. We weren't clinical in any sense, and then obviously they took a chance that they got. So fair play to them. But it was an important moment in my season, looking at them play that game and just thinking, all right, something needs to shift here. We need to make a big kind of leap, and I'm sure Dom's going to talk about it shortly about some of the changes and shifts that we did at the weekend, which seem to have reignited some elements of what we do. So that's my very, very swift Millwall review. It weren't good.
I would just quickly, based on events from today, just come back to the thing that you touched on, which was the big problem for me, which was Godden and Walker up front. I don't ever want to see that ever again, and it looks like we might not have to.
Yeah, they're alone on the cards.
Yeah, so it would appear that not in the same way that when the first that I heard about Bidwell it was on the BBC website. There's sometimes you look at things and you go, all right, that's actually happened then, is it? Tyler Walker to Portsmouth for the rest of the season looks like is that actually a thing. Right.
You do wonder, so that in itself, it makes sense for him. He needs games. He wants games. Do we say we still need somebody to come in to make that nice 4 at top? Is that something that you think we're going to replace him with?
It's interesting because if not, they've got 2 strikers fit, and we play with 2 strikers. You think that he has to, doesn't he? Because I don't think you can just go straight to Tavares without having tried him before.
Yeah, we need options. Options are absolutely critical. I mean, the first 11 and whatever your first team is, and even if he moves towards kind of a 1 up front kind of thing, things don't go your way, and it only takes 1 injury and stuff. And I think we always need, we need to be able to juggle and shift. And it's like I'm hoping that means there's maybe someone fresh coming in. Tavares, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing him on the bench. Maybe just give him give him a chance just to see if he slots in or he can, bed himself into the team. They know better than we do what he's kind of capable of and whether his temperament's quite there, up to kind of senior level or not at the moment. But I would always like to see just maybe whether he's got that belief, which means that just inexplicably as a young player, you're miles better than everybody else around you.
Every time we have a player in the youth team score a load of goals, is I tweet Kev Monks and say, what about this one? And very much in the same vein as Jordan Ponticelli, with Tavares, he just said, yep, good. But lots of players have scored lots of goals for the
That's true.
Yeah. You just never know, do you? So, I mean, obviously we want him to be fantastic, but I don't think you can just... Tyler Walker, at the very least, is that if Godden got injured, I don't think many people would be massively terrified at our... Do you know what I mean? I think I don't think he'd be as good, but I think he'd come in and score goals. So I think if they're going to let him go, I sort of think they're going to have to replace him with something.
Yeah.
Maybe a big lad.
You like a big lad, don't you?
I like a big strong boy. Yeah, I mean, I'd bring Max back, but I think we need something other than just a poachy lad. And I do think there are games this season still where, especially who'd looked very good against us recently that pressed us really high, where you just think occasionally we could just do with someone who might be able to bring the ball down a little bit and just hold it for a second. Anyway, but we didn't need a big lad against Peterborough because we'd got enough big lads, hadn't we, Dom?
Yeah, I suppose the main thing going to the Peterborough game was at 2:00 on Saturday when the team was announced, and we saw that Ben Wilson was staying in goal. He wasn't just in the team because of COVID and the cup. Robin seemingly has decided that for whatever reason going forward, he wants to try Ben Wilson out in goal for this moment in time. We also saw Jordan Shipley at left wing back, and possibly his last game for the club. It's not quite clear, but he hasn't played a single league minute until this game, and we've basically gone through like 5 different options at left wing back this season before ending up at Shipley. So it doesn't really seem like either that's something we're going to try going forward or Shipley's really in the plans. Maybe that's a different conversation now that we're sort of moving. We've played this 3-4-2-1 again over the last couple of games, and that gives more of an opportunity for Shipley to come in the team. And
he did all right as well.
Yeah, and Walker's seemingly off, so maybe the conversation's a different one now. But it did seem quite sort of last gamey for him. But yeah, it's one of those teams you see sort of throughout the season where you look at it when it comes out and you go, oh my god, what's happening here? And then because Mark runs his name, you just go, well, there's clearly a reason for it. I mean, sometimes like managers towards sort of the end of their cycles, they just sort of make these kind of changes to the team. Obviously in the main, these were sort of enforced by sort of poor form / injuries, but yeah, it's with Mark Robbins, you just tend to trust that there's a very good reason for the team that he's picked. And that proved to be the case for much of the game. It was kind of a strange first half in particular where I didn't think we were playing particularly well. We looked a little bit rusty. There were a few misplaced passes here and there, but we were just better than Peterborough in a lot of areas, and particularly just in the way we set about pressing them. And I thought Jamie Allen and Callum O'Hare were really important for the team in that earlier stage of the game, just setting about Peterborough and just giving us that foothold up the pitch and forcing errors. And they played really well. They missed a few chances, but it's one of those where it could have been a more comfortable win if they had been playing any better. But we won that game thanks to a large part for their efforts. And then the goals started with Hamer scoring a wonderful bolt from the blue. There's been a lot of criticism for their goalkeeper for that goal, which I understand because he gets quite close to it and it's from quite far out and not necessarily the most powerful of hits, but for me, it was
I
a
think
good
he
strike.
sees it really late.
Yeah, it was a good strike, and he doesn't quite have enough time to get across for it. Don't quite understand the level of criticism their goalkeeper got for it. It was just a good strike.
I think keepers, if a keeper gets close to something, I think people just assume that they should have saved it. I thought he hit it through players, although not like weaved it through. And I just don't think you're expecting it for someone to shoot from that far out. If you're unsighted anyway, it must just be. It happens so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I first saw it and thought, oh, I'd like to see that again and wonder whether the keeper could have done better. But I watched it back and I was like, I don't know. That's just really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, and what else was, and Hamer's quite good at just hitting those strikes. Yeah, it's just the thing with Hammer is he doesn't sort of necessarily strike the ball really sort of powerfully aiming for the top corner. He always, quite often with those strikes from the edge area, seems to go for those lower hits, which quite often leads to just like daisy cutters or things that don't really seem to have a good chance of going in. I would like hit a defender's shins or something. It was an occasion where that kind of strike is going to be really deceptive and put the keeper off. And hopefully he can be a little bit more accurate with those, because he's someone I feel could score quite a few more goals than he does from range.
I want him shooting. A lot more. And from that range, I don't mind a little bit. Not all the time, heaven forbid, but like, you know, he has got a decent shot on him. And also, do you remember that inexplicable free kick where he kind of just sent it up into orbit and it just dropped down onto the bar? And it's like, if you can do that with your shot, you've obviously got a decent technique. And I want to see him having a go, more often. And I want Callum Hare passing the ball back to him so he can shoot in those kind of situations, that sort of stuff.
Moving on from the first goal, the second goal, about 10 minutes later, as mentioned earlier, She's just doing his bullying and just looked like we're on a merry way. There was a few moments of nerviness at the back. Part of it was caused by Peterborough changing their formation to a 3-4-1-2. So instead of starting with the diamond formation it had, which didn't really test Shipley at all defensively from left wing back, which was the concern with playing him there. Suddenly he was up against Mumba, who they just signed on loan from Norwich, who was causing a few problems for Shipley. And moreover, there was just a few moments from Peterborough where they're starting to run directly at us and causing a few problems. At one point, their centre back, Josh Knight, had a really good chance from just striding forward up the pitch, muscling Chief off the ball. And just that final pass didn't come off for him. So there was a sense of danger, but nothing really that threatening until the chance that followed Alan having a good effort from a really good Hamer pass.
Oh, I love that pass. I mean, that was just perfect weight, and he sees that sort of pass a lot of the time, and sometimes he'll get it, and sometimes he doesn't quite figure it out. But that was just everybody could see that pass on, and I just thought excellent. But that was another Alan with his short legs, not quite able to get the ball in control. He has one in the second half, which is very similar, where the ball really should be controlled, and he couldn't quite match it. But that was all about Hamer, I thought.
Yeah, and then talking about Hamer, the Peterborough goal where Rose gets a bit of a clearance on it. Well, that was where I wondered whether if McFadden was playing, he just would have just smashed the ball away, and it just wouldn't have been any doubt about Hamer trying to control it and get a touch. Possibly because he's a little unfit, not quite sharp, that couldn't quite bring it under control, or was even trying to take control of the ball he couldn't really do. And then George Grant for Peterborough puts into the top corner, which was unfortunate.
I mean, it's not great from Harmer, but also Grant had got quite a lot of work to do to get that ball into the net.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good finish.
Yeah, it was tidy. So that set up a second half on a bit of a knife edge. It felt a fairly chaotic game where we had been better than Peterborough. We'd missed a few good chances, and it felt like after they'd scored that maybe the momentum could tip the other way. There was a bit of a scary start to the second half where we went a little bit sloppy in our passing and almost encouraged Peterborough on, but they couldn't really get up the pitch for much of the second half. I think a big reason for that is Jordan Shipley at left wing back doing a lot of good work just to shut down Mumba, who was carrying the ball really well for them. So by the time they put on Johnson Clark-Harris and they put on another striker, Ricky J. Jones, they just couldn't get the ball to them because we were having a lot of the ball ourselves and we were forcing them off it through our pressing and energy when they did get the chance to go on the ball. So we just made life so difficult for them. And the second half was just about whether we were going to get that goal to kill it off. And we had some pretty good chances to do so. One excellent chance for Callum O'Hare, where Todd Kane put in a beauty of a ball, and it's kind of the last player, sorry Callum, that you'd want it to fall to at the moment.
In the 6-yard box especially. That man has never scored from the 6-yard box, has he? It's just insane.
Well, except in like his first 3 appearances for us when he was on loan.
Were they 6-yard box?
He scored that goal against QPR last season.
I remember the one when he got really
start
close where volleyed
yeah,
it.
like he took it on really well.
Yeah, so just think about it. I just remember those first few appearances. He was absolutely electric and just like specifically in just taking control and being killer in those final moments. And wonder where that has gone. But I mean, that's not to say he's not developed into a fantastic player, but that's the frustration with O'Hare. And there was another moment in the second half where he was basically free carrying the ball at the Peterborough defence, a lot of space to run into, and you just feel him weighing up his options, and eventually he's lucky enough to get tripped up for a free kick. You sort of wonder after he signed that contract what the next step is for him. I think he's a bit of a risk of plateauing, but also is just in the nature of watching him regularly that you kind of disregard the brilliant stuff he's capable of, the pressing, the actual like getting past players, carrying the ball up the pitch, and you just want more and more from him. Then Hamer had another really good effort when the ball fell to him from corner. Then it was Alan when we played that short free kick to him, which he really should have scored for him if he'd been able to bring the ball under control. And then just when you're wondering whether the game's going to slip away from us, another Todd Kane peach of a cross gets turned in by Nathan Thompson, who I don't know how much I've mentioned this in the past, who I absolutely hate as a footballer. He is like I would love him to play for Coventry because I think he is an absolute genius in winning niggly little free kicks, kicking people on the ankle, time wasting. Just like throughout the years with like Swindon and Peterborough, where he's been at, it's just one of those players I always notice that he's just so good at those dark arts, and he's so good at boiling my piss. But it's good to see him scoring an own goal. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this Saturday. And then he had a bit of an interesting cameo from Victor Gyökeres. He had one almost Tony Yeboah-esque moment where he's in sort of true Gyökeres style. You're not quite sure whether he's got the ball under control or whether he's sort of flicking the ball past the defenders through sheer intention. Then he gets a shot off, which just missed the near post. And then he got the assist for Godden just surging past with Peterborough, absolutely spent in injury time. And just really nice to see him cutting the ball back for Godden when he probably had a decent right to shoot there. And that was 4-1, and a lovely away win set us off this second half of the season.
It was more like it from Gyökeres, though, wasn't it? I mean, I admittedly, it was against a very tired and open team, but I think that's maybe what he needed. He'd come up against some really decent defenders throughout a period, which I feel like caused him to lose kind of the belief and the kind of the confidence that he is and a strong player. So I think coming on against such an open team and, like you say, getting the assist, having that kind of that mental moment where that what a goal that would have been in a kind of, like you say, Yeboah / Gaza kind of approach to playing football, which was pretty decent. And just seeing him surge on a little bit, that was good. So what I hope is that whatever innate thing within him which allows him to do the good stuff, hopefully that's kind of going to trigger that again, because I feel a bit annoyed with him because I feel like he tricked us early in the season by being so good, and we relied so heavily on him. So we could really do with him coming back to that form again, because if he does, we are such a different proposition. And with Godden coming off the bench as well, and my take on people coming off the bench, subs are good. In certain matches, it's good that you have somebody of that quality, even if they might be annoyed that they're only playing 30 minutes, but they might get more assists and goals in that period than they would do if they played like the first 60. So I'm all for Robins doing this sort of thing with our squad and being pretty smart with how they use them.
The thing for me with Gyökeres is I just thought he looked physically much more capable. I'm still really keen to know how badly that injury affected him.
Oh, the Blackburn one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I just think he went through a spell where he just didn't look I saw the goal, somebody posted the goal that he scored earlier in the season where Jamie Allen takes that really nice, very short touch to knock it into his path, and he has to run like 40 yards. The guy's like a bull, just like bombing through the middle. For a guy that big, you just felt as soon as he got on it, you were like, no one is stopping this guy. And then that just dissipated. And it's going to be really interesting to find out whether that's a mental thing with him or whether it was a physical thing with him. You've got to think it could really be either, couldn't it? Because if it's physical, that would suggest that he's going to just keep doing that all his career. But there's got to be a reason why we signed him. Maybe it's both.
I mean, it could be a blend, couldn't it? But I really hope it is physical, because I was very excited about him as a player.
I loved the way he was playing. Yeah.
But early on this season, I mean, the idea that he had been hiding that kind of performance. But ultimately, it comes down to it. Like, if he's capable of producing that kind of performance, that should be. Yeah. That's what he could be able to do. So they say the lower down the levels you get, the less consistent you get. And I get it. But we're in the Championship. He's playing for Sweden, so you'd like to think that. I'm with you. I think some of it was mental, but it was too much of a coincidence for him to go from playing well to then getting that injury to suddenly kind of not really.
Just the wind out of his sails.
Yeah, exactly, doubting his ability to kind of take it past people, or maybe to he had such a stride on him, and he just stopped doing all those things, which was really, really strange. So I have my fingers crossed for him in the second half of the season.
I went to Blackpool away, and he was brilliant, and it was because every time we broke, he was stood sort of maybe 10 yards inside their half, and it didn't matter how the ball came to him. You could play it to his head, to his chest, to his feet. And every single time, he was just taking two men out of the game and just absolutely hammering forward. And you just thought, this is a one-man team. You're just dragging us up the pitch, and then you're creating at the end of it. Either you're getting a shot away, or you're creating something for someone else. It just must be a nightmare to play against with someone who's so physically dominant like that, but that is so quick and able. Because a good dribbler as well.
Yeah. Not that it looks like he knows what he's doing with it, but it's still he gets to where he wants to get to. Yeah.
So I mean, I've really missed him, but I thought that I haven't seen him move the way that he did when he created Godden's second goal since maybe October. That kind of purposeful running I haven't seen for a long time. Right, okay, so I think thank you, Dom. That is
Yeah.
beautifully comprehensive. We've got QPR on Saturday. Have you
Yes.
done a little? I mean, do you even need to do preview, or are you just so well read that you know anyway?
Yeah, I tried to brush up a bit on my Queen's Park Rangers. Starting with why isn't there apostrophe in Queen's Park Rangers?
That's a great question. Yeah.
I think I was reading something about earlier in the season. They just decided that apostrophes weren't in, and they were just going to lie about their name. So onto the actual team. They were a team who, over the second half of last season, were the third best team in the division, and the two other teams that were better than them over the second half of last season were promoted. So they were sort of in that best of the rest category, which you have to do with like championship previews, because you got parachute payment teams, and so that sort of distorts the balance. I think in the normal division, they would have been one of the favourites to go up the season. They have been thoroughly competent in continuing that trend. A few little dips over the course of the campaign, but nothing concerning. They are just a good championship side. They're solid at the back. They can play if they need to. They can be a little bit more direct. They can battle. They're just a very nice, well-balanced team. Their two best players are currently at the African Cup of Nations. That's Sani Dieng in goal and Ilias Chair, who is their number 10.
That's very useful.
However, they have quite a deep squad, so that isn't that big of an issue. They signed David Marshall, the Scotland goalkeeper, to play Sani Dieng for a couple of games. So they're well resourced, and they've got Chris Willock, whose brother Joe plays for Newcastle, and Chris Willock at one point was seen as a much bigger prospect. He started off at Arsenal, went to Benfica at one point, and is nailing things down at QPR. Sort of was once seen as quite a silky winger kind of player, but has developed into more of a number 10. And he's got that nice blend of skill set. He's someone who can pick a pass, but he can just beat players for skill. It's very well-rounded and tough to contain. And then at the back, you've got Rob Dickey, who is a very good footballer, who's good at just like dribbling past players to get himself out of defence. And then he's alongside Jimmy Dunn and Johan Barbe in their back three, who are two very solid defenders. And that's sort of the theme with this QPR team. They're just a good blend of robust and skillful, perhaps best epitomised by the Norwegian Stefan Johansson in midfield, who is quite a good passer of the ball, sort of a box-to-box player, and he absolutely loves kicking people on the ankles as well. So he's that blend of steel and silk, you could say. And then their strike options, I don't think they have a particularly amazing, prolific leading striker, but between Lyndon Dykes, who's just a complete physical battering ram, Scotland international, Andre Gray, who is still very threatening, running in behind, and Charlie Austin.
That's a pretty decent lineup, isn't it?
That's a really good blend, and probably three players who can each get 10 to 15 goals a season. So that makes QPR a very tough side. Maybe not hugely free-wheeling and exciting at times, but they can beat you in a number of ways. And it kicks off quite a tricky run over the next week, where we've also got Stoke, who are around the playoffs, and Middlesbrough, who've got fantastic momentum at the moment under Chris Wilder, and it's away at Middlesbrough, so that makes it seem all the tougher. But
I would write that one off right away. Like, I don't see us getting anything there.
But after winning that Peterborough game, and with all the games we've got in hand over much of the teams around us, if we get a couple of wins, or maybe even 4 or 5 points over these next 3 games, we're right in the playoff picture, guys.
I would kill for 4 points now. I would think that would represent absolutely fabulous value out of them games. Stoke have dropped off a little bit, haven't they? in the same way that we have, where they've also got games in hand, but they're less than us. You would hope possibly we could get 3 points there. I'm not sure I see anything out of the QPR game or the Middlesbrough game, especially the Middlesbrough game.
The only thing that gives me hope about the QPR game was probably when we played them early in the season. That was Robin's most obvious error, where we were kind of back and forth with them, kind of pound for pound. It was a decent performance. We had Gyökeres doing what he normally does, and for some reason, nobody really understood. He took Gyökeres off in the second half and put Walker and Godden up front, and they beat us. And they were decent, but it was a good contest. We were with them, and then we lost that outlet in the first half when we got rid of Gyökeres and brought on that weird strike force. And yeah, I just felt like looking at us play them. It's all changed now, obviously, but we looked just as good as they looked. So I fancy, I fancy we can give them another good game.
Just quickly before we leave QPR specifically and their personnel, any word, Dom, on, I know that this is a bit Cov-centric, on either Sam McCallum or George Thomas?
Yeah, well, I think Sam McCallum's just sort of been in and out of that QPR side. There's been injuries here and there. They've got Lee Wallace at left wing back who'll probably play in this game, who is ever so slightly the first choice, but McCallum's done okay. He scored a couple of goals for them. And yeah, as we saw last season and the season before, he's basically a decent left wing back. Maybe he's not much more than that, or maybe he has hitherto unseen potential that is going to come to the fore next season at Norwich. So championship player, can't have really any arguments about that. George Thomas, I'm not really sure why QPR signed him. He is someone I liked a lot when he was with us, but he'd only had half a good season at best, you could say, in League One. He got his move to Leicester to play with under 23s, and I don't see why a championship club would have signed him, and that has unfortunately for him proven to be the case. He's sort of mainly sitting on the bench for them, if not just sort of an extra player in the squad, and sort of kind of feel sorry for him the way his career's panned out. I think why he left us was sort of more to do with us or getting relegated from League One and needing to go somewhere, and like the compensation rules sort of ruled him out of a move to a club where he could have played regular football. But the decision to go to QPR or decision to sign him, I don't think was a particularly smart one.
Shame. You wonder what happens next for him. Right, okay, so anything anyone wants to add before we wrap this baby up?
Just a very quick nod to Jordan Shipley, actually, who last season, didn't do anything really. He scored a couple of goals, but his performance levels were low, and he looked very out of place in the league. But I thought the other day, for him to come in first minutes of the season in the league, a little bit shaky to start with, but he soon got into his stride, and I think I don't like the idea of it being his last performance for us, because I like him, but if it is, I just think I think he's done a hell of a lot for us in his time, and nobody really expected him to. He's not a cool or trendy footballer, but there's at times where he's looked a very, very good footballer. So if he does disappear from us, I like to think somebody else will take a punt on him, because I think he's got quite a bit to offer. And I just thought the performance the other day for somebody to come in and look pretty threatening on the left hand side, putting some. You just remind what a wand of a left foot he's got, as Oggy will constantly remind you. And I think it was I'm really pleased for him that he was able to come in, and I was worried that it would just be Shipley of last season where he couldn't handle the notion of the championship. But yeah, the space and the formation obviously helped him, but being able to get the ball and just feel a little bit more comfortable and at home in a Coventry shirt was really pleasing to see.
You wonder whether he might just need a time machine to go back to a time where teams played a more conventional 4-4-2, and to just join a team and play on the left side of midfield.
Yeah, the left foot, doesn't he?
But I just think he's sort of I think the biggest problem he's had at Cov is I don't think he's ever nailed down an area
Yeah.
of the pitch that is absolutely his. The closest he's come to doing it was when we played with the box in the season that we went up from League One. And I think you'd probably have to, on balance, say that he was our most effective attacking midfielder as one
Mm.
of those two players. But I don't know quite whether he's enough of a purely creative force to warrant. Like I struggle to imagine him next to O'Hare in that system in the Championship.
Yeah. It's the level, isn't it? I think. I think in that position, it does require a bit more, and something more sort of like a bit more sort of the speed of thought, and I don't think necessarily has that. But I think that season when we went up in from League One specifically, where it seemed to be that we'd started to kind of control games and dominate games and kind of assert ourselves as a really good team. It gave him the opportunity to kind of believe in himself and express himself a bit more. And those were the moments where he was really shining for us. I thought he was looking in the middle of the pitch, but like you say, I think longer term, if he wanted to get kind of play at the highest level he possibly can, probably hone his craft on the left hand side might have actually suited him a little bit better.
But equally, I would have said from last season, it would have been a toss up between two players as to the players that seemed to be furthest out of their depth playing in the Championship. And it would have been him and Jamie Allen.
Yeah,
Jamie Allen's come
Allen as
back in
well.
this season and kind of shown that sometimes you just need a bit of a run. And I do wonder whether the fact that he's never quite nailed down a consistent position here has ended up going against him because he's had to sort of acclimatise to lots of games, but that lots of, without ever really getting a full run. But I
Yeah,
also think that probably won't ever happen here now, will it? And maybe his best thing is for him to make a move. I do wish that Ed was here so that we could hear him say, "Oh, he's not even a footballer," blah 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 blah, and all of his sort of bitterness. But I think it would be hard pushed to, to not want only the very best for him wherever that is. Right. Okay. Anything else? Very good, Neil. You're right. You're absolutely right. Jordan Shipley, the man, the legend. Anything else?
We've signed a footballer today.
We have, yeah. Dom, yeah, is our sort of resident man who knows. Do you want to tell?
Yeah, so Jake Bidwell is someone who has played over 300 games at championship level. I think it's almost that alone. And yeah, he's 28 years old, so he's not completely past it. He's sort of someone close to his prime. That just how far we kind of come as a football club over these past 2 or 3 years. That I think if we'd signed him in the summer or the summer before that, that would just be a ridiculous, unbelievable sign for us. And now that it just looks like the signing you almost expect us to make, is just it's a nice mark of progress. He's someone who, for a spell last season, was probably one of the best left wing backs in the Championship with Swansea, with him and Connor Roberts, who was playing on the right side. They made for quite a nice partnership. Someone who maybe isn't entirely consistent and maybe doesn't entirely excel at any one single thing when it comes to being a left wing back. But I mean, the left wing backs we've gone through this season below Ian Matson, we signed Todd Kane because we thought that he was probably a left wing back, and we didn't really check that theory until he actually played for us. We had Pap Suare on trial over the summer, who basically hadn't played for 2 years. We tried Davo there, which seemed like the least worst option, and then partially I think due to injury against Derby, he was completely Marcus Halled by Festi Ebesele for them, and that was possibly the straw that broke the camel's back and made Mark Robbins and maybe others at the club realise that we probably need to get a professional backup left wing back. I suppose it leaves quite an interesting situation as to what do we do with the rest of the season once Matson is fit, because I think Matson is quite clearly a very good player who I want to see a lot more of. But we've got Bidwell, who's here until 2025.
Do you think there's any chance that we could sell Maatsen back to Chelsea? Because my understanding is that he's played enough games now that they would have to buy him back.
Possibly.
I don't know whether
We
that's
don't know.
nonsense, but my understanding is that they could have recalled him in January if he'd have played less than 20 games. But because he's played more than 20, they can have him back, but they'd have to pay some sort of compensation to us.
Yeah, I suppose, do Chelsea want to do that? Is that have they got other options that are better? I don't know. Maybe it is a little bit conspicuous that Maatsen hasn't played the past couple of games, but I suppose we can only trust Mark Robins on his word that he is injured, and that's why we've been moved to sign a proper left wing back.
I thought he was another COVID victim, was he not?
I don't know. It's kind of the thing with Mark Robins. He doesn't really like saying about injuries.
Robins doesn't say anything. I think it's really noticeable recently that the interviews have gone completely off a cliff, and no more so than the kind of constant reiteration of the fact that we wouldn't be signing anyone at all in January, only then to come to line a really good left wing back. You just think, I don't know what. It must be really hard for journalists that are talking to him because he's never even looking at them, just looking over their shoulder, just thinking, God, I can't wait to not be doing this interview. They're like, "Yeah, are you pleased with the result?" He's like, "Yeah, we've just played 90 minutes, and a lot of things happened. There's a lot of balls kicked." It's just so vague and meaningless.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Anything else?
So good.
No, beautiful. Right. Thank you for joining us, Dom.
Yeah, it's good to be on.
Thank you, Neil.
Cheers.
We'll be back when we're back. Bye.